we're back for another week of pop politics.
And boy, has it been a week.
Yeah, well, it started like the minute we stopped recording, as per usual.
Seriously. All right.
So, jumping right back in, Stu has our first thing on pop.
Yes. So, as many of you know, Pixar's Coco ran with a different type of short, Olaf's Frozen Adventure, not the traditional Pixar short. And that 21 minutes long, basically
super long for a short.
A trailer for Frozen 2, which doesn't even come out for 2 years.
Yeah.
But everybody hated it. Hated it. Nobody liked it. People went to the movies and thought they were in the wrong movie because it was so long. They were like, wait, am I in the right place? This is not what I'm here to see.
Yeah.
And apparently, Coco is doing awesome in Mexico. It's already the highest grossing film in Mexico ever.
Really?
Which is awesome. But they hated the Olaf's Frozen Adventure. The movie theaters in Mexico stopped showing it because they hated it so much. But Disney is now officially taking it off with Coco, which they claim it was supposed to be for a limited time only anyways, so it wasn't supposed to run the whole time, but I don't know. It seems a little...
Yeah, that's really interesting that, such a beloved character from a really loved film.
From a hit movie, yeah.
Is just so hated.
I just think the presentation was wrong. Pixar's shorts, everybody loves those. And, Pixar has an established tradition. And then Disney just comes in and says, no, you have to do it like this. It just shows... I just hate the Disneyfication of everything. The fact that Pixar is owned by Disney, lets them do that. Whereas if Pixar wasn't owned by Disney, you would have gotten a Pixar short.
Right.
So
it would have been 2 seconds. Yeah. A little bit longer because you have to tell a story, but yeah, you get the picture. That's crazy. It'll be interesting to see then if this has fallen. I wonder if this has fallen so short because it was so long before a film that was anticipated, or if it fell short because of the storyline. And if so, what are they going to do about because it would make sense that the Frozen 2 follows the same kind of writing and the same kind of storyline. So if this fell so far flat, are they reconsidering everything at this point?
Another criticism it had was whitewashing. You had Frozen, which was all white actors, and then in front of Coco, which was all Latino actors. Yeah. So they were it was criticized for the racial.
Yeah, that would make sense too.
Juxtaposition.
Have you seen it yet?
Coco?
Yeah.
No, we want to, but we haven't gone yet.
Yeah, because we remember when it first came out, we thought it was gonna be a book of life. We watched the trailer together.
I still kind of think that, but I've heard good reviews.
I've heard really good reviews. It's a really high grossing film, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I want to see it. I'll go see it.
Well, we'll see. All right, next thing. Moving on. House of Cards.
Yes, so the hit Netflix political drama House of Cards, which was one of, if not the first Netflix original series. I think it was
the first one.
Either that or Orange is the New Black.
Yeah,
I can't remember. One of those two, but those two were the first ones, and then they spawned all the others, which season 2 of The Crown comes out tomorrow. I'm excited. But allegations came out against Kevin Spacey about sexual harassment.
He was the lead in the
And he was
show.
the lead, so, what do you do in that situation? When someone's the lead, you can't just, it's hard to drop them, or to recast them, or to write them out.
Especially after they're in their, 7th season? I think this was season 7.
I can't remember. It's up there. But Netflix decided to drop Kevin Spacey from the next season and run with Robin Wright as the lead for the last season, which is pretty amazing. That's a big decision by Netflix.
So Robin Wright is, so she's Kevin Spacey's right-hand woman. In the film, they play husband and wife. In the show, I actually haven't watched the show. I got into it, and then there were some things that made me feel uncomfortable, and I stopped watching. But she basically it's the two of them, but he's the main role, and she's just right next to him in role category. So it's really interesting they decided to make it a women-centric show, right? They're doing, half a season, I think, for this final season.
Maybe 6 episodes.
Something like that. So, well, it's a bold move, and I think it's a good move. Okay. Next thing that leads us right into the Time Person of the Year. So Time announced its Person of the Year this year, and it is the Silence Breakers. And the Silence Breakers are the people who came forward, and it's both men and women, who came forward and broke the silence on the way or sexual harassment claims in all facets. There are people like Ashley Judd and Taylor Swift and I can't remember all. I think Terry Rathers is one of them.
The woman who started the Me Too movement.
The woman who started the Me Too movement.
Alyssa Milano was also in there.
Yeah, because Alyssa Milano really made the movement go crazy. And she picked it up somehow and went crazy with it. And they're like hotel workers and strawberry pickers. And I mean, they just brought together all of these women and men who had done so many things. There's so many people. It's a fascinating article, linked to the Time article on our blog post, because it is just, I loved reading the article. And then they have pictures of all of these men and women, and if you could, and when you click on the pictures, it gives you their story. And so like this cohesive story of the Me Too movement, and then within that you get to see their individual stories, and it really is just an incredible story, and it's definitely worth your time to read the story. But also I think that it was the perfect choice for Person of the Year this year instead of someone else. So it's a beautiful story. All right, the next thing that we're going to move on really quick because there's so much to cover this week, but the next thing is another it's related to sexual harassment, but not really. So Johnny Depp was accused of abuse, domestic abuse earlier this year, and it kind of upset the Harry Potter world. It
did. So he's cast as, he plays Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts series.
Yeah.
And a lot of fans and people are urging Warner Brothers and co. to, recast him, write him out. And like people
I mean, honestly, they could do. Grindelwald
in his
true form appears for all of 30 seconds in the film.
Right. But I mean, he was still in it, so it's like, what do you do? Yeah. How do we introduce a new person and still call it the same person? There's a lot of like continuity issues,
right,
with doing that.
Well, and that like J.K. Rowling is like, she is completely a feminist and completely
she speaks her mind,
an activist on every level. And so this was a particular problem set that they hadn't done anything about, and then they said that they were moving ahead. They had kind of, what did they say?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think Warner Brothers came out and said that they were moving ahead.
Yeah, with him in the role.
But
and everyone was upset because he's been accused of domestic abuse. Like, why is J.K. Rowling not doing something about this?
And she finally released a statement today.
Yeah.
And just so you know, like, the magnitude, like, J.K. Rowling doesn't speak out very often, but when she does, she does.
You have to be careful how you say that, because she's active on Twitter all the time.
She is, but stuff. She gets so many questions and so many requests, and she doesn't respond to most of them. She
picks and chooses.
So she picks and chooses what she speaks out about. She is active on Twitter, but I'm trying to say she gets so many people tweeting at her and so many people asking her questions that she only responds to certain hand-picked things.
Right.
Like, she'll chime in, like, to little things about Harry Potter here and there, but she gets so many requests. So I'm just trying to point out the fact that she chose to respond to this is monumental.
It's a big deal.
It's important. So she released, like, this big statement on her website, and basically what she said is, like, her and the producers, like David Yates, David Heyman, they got together, Warner Brothers, they looked at the allegations, they, investigated it, but they determined that they could move forward with him as the character. But she said she said she wasn't just blindly doing it. Like, she understood the implications, but she basically just said, like, we looked into it, and we're moving forward with him in the role.
Mm-hmm.
But she alluded to the fact that they considered recasting him.
Yeah.
That they didn't just blindly, like, say, nope, we're keeping him. Like, they thought about it and discussed it.
Yeah. So I think that this outrage over this topic leads to an important point that's with, like, all of the social issues that we're dealing with and the social outrage is that we have to be really careful about how anger and self-righteous indignation, and not just self-righteous indignation, but righteous indignation, can sometimes bleed over into the wrong end of things. Because if you just assume and you accept everyone's word without without investigating a little bit and without getting your facts straight, then you'll easily fall into the trap that fake news gets us into, and that false allegations and stuff like that. So this goes back to the story with the Washington Post and the Ventura people, or whatever they were. Veritas, yeah. You have to, like, examine the facts and sometimes people, you don't want to think this about anyone who's coming forward with allegations of abuse or domestic or sexual harassment, but you have to be you have to be empathetic, but also a skeptic. And I don't want to come off in any way sounding like a terrible person, but because I do believe those who come forward with the messages of allegation, but every allegation and every everything requires or needs to have someone believe in it, but also someone who is a skeptic of it, so that we get the truth. Okay, moving on after that small soapbox. The Spotify has been releasing its end of year statistics.
Speaking of British people, the most played, most streamed artist on Spotify this year was Ed Sheeran. Which I think is awesome. I love Ed Sheeran. He totally deserves it. I mean, he got a huge bump because he released a new album this year. But he also had, because of that, he also had the most streamed album and the most streamed single, which was Shape of You.
Yeah.
But this is interesting because Drake has been the most streamed artist on Spotify for the last 2 years in a row.
Oh, really?
So he dethroned Drake. And wait for it, Ed Sheeran had a total of 6.3 billion streams this year. 6.3 billion.
So you contributed 6 billion of those?
Oh, probably. A lot. He was my most streamed artist with my little my end of year thing.
Yeah. So in the spirit of this, like, we should share our top artists.
Oh, okay. Where do I have it?
Mine
I have mine.
Mine is very much...
Oh, wait. I lied.
Uh-oh.
Ed Sheeran was my second streamed artist. My number one was John Legend.
Oh, really? He did the Ariana Grande and John Legend Beauty and the Beast version that you really liked.
Yeah, and I just went into a phase.
That's right.
I went into a phase. I made a whole playlist just of John Legend. The History Has Its Eyes on You. From the Hamilton mixtape is amazing. Yeah,
that's a good one.
I totally went through a phase of John Legend.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So number 1, John Legend. 2, Ed Sheeran. 3, Imagine Dragons. 4, Kelly Clarkson, which she has a new album out.
Oh, really?
Which is good. And 5, Jamie Lawson.
I don't even know who Jamie Lawson is.
He's a newer guy. He's pretty good though.
Mine are all classical. So I have Blake Neely, who writes the scores for Supergirl and Flash, the TV shows. It should be noted that my study music of choice is actually superhero and movie soundtracks, superhero TV soundtracks and movie scores. So I also have John Williams, so Star Wars, and a couple others. I have Howard Shore. I can't remember what he writes. He's Lord of the Rings. Michael Giacchino, who's Rogue One, and Henry Jackman, and I can't remember what he writes. It's probably one of my superhero soundtracks, I'm sure. So, I listen to Spotify while I study, not for much else. I listen to other things too, but...
I had 54,000 minutes of music.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not in that neighborhood. I have 31,000.
Yeah, I listen
to
that. Okay.
All right, moving on from that little self-indulgent moment.
Oh, this next story I think is so interesting, so unprecedented and crazy. Yeah. So, the IOC came out with its decision about what it was going to do.
The International Olympic Committee.
Yes, thank you. I should just not assume that people know what acronyms mean. The International Olympic Committee, which oversees and awards the Olympics and controls everything, they were investigating Russian doping from the 2014 Olympics, and they were coming down with their decision about what to do, what penalty. Were they going to ban them outright or just ban certain athletes? Yeah. There was a lot of...
Just to refresh, like, basically, we had discovered that during the 2014 Olympics in Sochi, Russia, there had been this, like, state-sponsored doping scheme in order to get the Russian Olympians to do better, and it was state-sponsored. Like, they determined that this had come from actual, like, Russian officials, so that's why the International Committee got involved.
The New York Times does a great in-depth piece about that, so if you want to, like, more, go to the New York Times. They have a great piece. So... But the IOC came out, and they are banning from the next Winter Olympics in February in South Korea. They are banning the entire Russian team as Russia.
As a Russian team.
Here's how it works. So individual Russian athletes who are clean.
And they have to go through rigorous testing to prove this. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast about it. It's like really rigorous testing.
So they have to pass testing.
They weren't a part of the doping scandal and that they're not doping now.
Oh, okay, good. So they can compete, but not under the Russian flag. They will compete under the Olympic flag as a neutral team.
As an Olympic athlete from Russia.
As neutral, yeah. So, but here's the fascinating thing. So the record books will officially show that Russia won 0 medals in this Winter Olympics.
Right.
Even if individual Russian athletes win medals, it will not count towards the Russian count. Which is huge because medal count is everything at the Olympics. Like, everything. And Russia won the medal count in Sochi. Like, they are a big player.
I don't know if that's true anymore, because they took a lot of medals away.
That's true. They retroactively. But they did. Who knows if they still do. But they, at one point, were the largest medal winner at the Sochi Games. But yeah, Russia is a huge player in the Winter Olympics. But also, the Russian flag cannot be displayed. The Russian anthem cannot be played. If individual Russian athletes win a medal, the Olympic anthem will play. Right. Like, this is huge. Like, they are basically banning any mention, anything about Russia. Which is crazy because the Olympics are all about representation. Like, you have your flag play, the national anthem, you wear your your uniforms with your decked out in your colors, and, like, the Olympics are all about representing your country.
So the big question after this ruling came down was, will Putin declare a statewide, like, protest of the Olympics and not allow any Russian athletes to go to the Olympics? And he didn't declare that. He's allowing that to go forward, which is just really interesting because it is all about representation. And so to not have the Russian representation really truly there, it's interesting that Putin would allow anyone to go, especially since it's in the past there have been complete boycotts of the Olympics.
Fun fact, yes, the last time there was a boycott was in 1984. The games were in Los Angeles, and this was like the Cold War. So the Soviet Union, former Russia, boycotted the Olympics.
That's right.
And the Summer Olympics before that in 1980 were in Moscow, and the United States boycotted.
So the other thing to look at right now is that the February Olympics are going to be in Pyeongchang, not Pyongyang, Pyeongchang. Pyeongchang is in South Korea. Pyongyang is the capital of North Korea. Yeah, like just one syllable.
Which are easy to confuse.
Yeah, very easy. So Pyeongchang, there have been concerns over safety there because of the increasing belligerence of North Korea. And I've heard rumors at one point that Germany, I think it was the German
I thought it was France.
Oh, it was France. You're right, it's France. France was considering not attending. I was like, it's one of those European nations.
Nikki Haley has said recently that the United States may consider not going. Like, she left the door open.
That's crazy.
That the United States wouldn't go.
That is absolutely
And everyone
bonkers.
Was like, wait, what?
To South Korea?
Yeah. And then, like, Sarah Sanders was asked today at the White House press briefing, and she didn't, like, outright deny the
That's bonkers. Idea. We're the biggest delegation.
Yeah, they're, like, leaving the door open just a crack, just in case.
Can you imagine what the Olympic athletes would say? Our Olympic athletes, that's crazy. I can't believe that'll actually happen.
I don't think it will, but the fact that they're, like, leaving the door open just that little bit of a crack
bonkers.
Is astounding.
Okay, well, moving on from that, I have 2 Star Wars things, okay? So
take us away.
The first thing is that
to a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, to a galaxy far, far away. So the movie comes out next weekend, and we're not talking about it until then, after this moment, because I have to get through finals first, and also I'm going with my little brother, so I have to wait until Saturday to go with him. The 2 things that I found out this week that are just, I'm a little bit freaked out about the one. So the first thing is that we found out the first 3 words of Last Jedi. There, some people are seeing previews, and this got leaked a little bit. That the first, right? So if you remember, we pick up from right where Force Awakens left off, which is on the hill on the island with Luke facing Rey, and Rey has the lightsaber outstretched. We're pretty sure we pick up right there. So from what the article that I read, the first 3 words are from Luke, and they are, "Who are you?" to Rey, which, is logical. So,
valid.
Yep. And also, so it'll go from there. That's, I was, so excited when I saw this article, and then I was like, wow, that's mundane. Not as exciting as I was hoping. Okay, but the other thing is that, this morning, Star Wars, it's 8 days till Star Wars, so Star Wars, the, official Instagram and official Twitter and whatever, put out this short that's, 8 days, and it's, got a bunch of, clips and people, and you see everything, and it's talking about fulfilling your destiny, and then at the very end, there's this, half a second clip of Rey wielding Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and I just can't. This is, they are teasing, this is not the first time that they are teasing that Rey may flip to the dark side, and I've been having this conversation with my friend about it, and she's pretty sure that they will, and I just don't know how I feel about it. And there's also that line from Luke in one of the trailers that says this is not going to go the way that you think, and I am not prepared for Rey to switch to the dark side, so, somebody tell me that that's not going to happen. But in the meantime, thank you. In the meantime, I'll continue freaking out until I see it next Saturday. Nobody say anything. I will be off Twitter starting probably Wednesday, because that's a long time to be off Twitter. The worldwide. Well, that's true.
You're going to need to do a complete a complete internet blackout.
I really am. The problem is that I run social media accounts for the university. Anyway.
Yeah, that should be safe.
I'm going to have to, hopefully. Well, college students aren't very good about that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so that's your Star Wars update for the week. We probably won't be able to give you an update on that until after winter break, because things happen, and I will probably be gone for a lot of winter break, and so will the Ulriches. All right, that's the last pop for this week, so we're going to move right on into politics. So last Friday morning, we had the first guilty plea to an actual crime in the Russia investigation, the Trump-Russia investigation for Mueller. And it was General Michael Flynn, who you will remember was the National Security Advisor, who stepped down in February. So he pled guilty to
lying to the FBI.
Lying to the FBI, and he really did have ties with former Ambassador Kislyak, who's the former ambassador to the United States from Russia. He also did a lot of other things that are crazy, and we're not going to go into them right now. But he's the first guilty plea in this investigation. We've had Papadopoulos, who...
Yeah, did Manafort not plead?
It wasn't connected to the...
Did he plead guilty or not guilty?
I don't think he pled. I think he was indicted.
He hasn't pled yet. No, okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we knew that Michael Flynn was indicted either. Anyway, and Papadopoulos has agreed to flip to the other side, and Flynn has also started working, giving information to Mueller for a lighter sentence.
Yeah, that's what
the
speculation is.
Yeah.
Which Flynn would know some stuff.
Oh, yeah. He definitely would. And he also, there was something about him using his position in the campaign and in the administration to further his own business ties, which is just, it's a mess, and Flynn is a mess. There was this great cartoon that somebody had drawn of Flynn as a Scooby-Doo villain, being carted away, and Fred was drawn with Mueller's face. It was really wonderful. I'll have to post it.
I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids and that dumb dog.
Yeah, it's great. And then
what's interesting about Flynn, real quick, is Manafort and Papadopoulos were campaign officials but Flynn was also in the administration.
You're right.
After Trump was inaugurated. Yeah. So that's like he's a bigger fish.
Yeah, he is.
He was way more involved than Manafort ever was.
Right, because Manafort was his campaign director for not very long, and then he was gone, and
he's gone.
He didn't even take him to the election. That was Kellyanne Conway, and so it's all sorts of things, and there's a lot more things going on with Trump. We were just reading that with Trump Jr. We were just reading that one of the top executives for Russia's equivalent to Facebook, which is called like VF or something like that, he offered assistance with social media to the Trump campaign, and that went to Dan Scavino and Trump Jr., and we don't know where it went from there, so that's a developing story. The other thing that's interesting about the Flynn case is that the judge who heard the guilty plea actually stepped aside today. He recused himself. We don't know why. He was actually an Obama appointee. We don't know why. Apparently the courts don't say that. And then the judge who replaced him is a Clinton appointee who was randomly selected. So we'll see where that goes from here. They'll do sentencing and stuff like that later. So that is your Flynn and Russia update that is far from over, and also far from comprehensive because the story is so huge. Okay, next thing. Moore and the RNC.
Oh, man. Roy Moore, the story that just doesn't go away.
It really doesn't. It's not going to go away till next Tuesday.
Even then, it's still going to... No matter what the outcome is, we're still going to be talking about it for weeks.
You hope that he would lose and then we won't be talking about it anymore.
Yeah. So, after the allegations came out, a bunch of establishment Republicans, told him he should step aside. But the most important thing was the RNC, the Republican National Committee, which is like the national party, and they are important because they provide money and support and volunteers and manpower. They dropped all of their connections with Moore. They stopped paying him money, stopped fundraising for him, stopped campaigning for him. But similarly, how a lot of this is similar to what happened after the Access Hollywood tape with Trump. A lot of people called for him to resign, but then slowly over time, like, people came back to him.
Yeah.
The RNC is now rebacking Moore.
So the reason for this is that Trump endorsed him, is supporting him, and technically Trump is the head of the RNC.
True, he's technically the head of
the Republican Party, which doesn't necessarily correlate to the RNC, but because they're one and the same.
Yeah, now the RNC official committee is backing him.
Yeah, we'll see how much good that'll do for the next half a week.
Yeah, polls I'm seeing have him and the Democrat almost neck and neck.
Yeah, and Doug Jones is campaigning hard. Doug Jones is the Democrat, and for that seat, so it'll just be really interesting to see what happens. And McConnell won't commit to anything if Moore is elected. He won't commit to doing anything about it when he's.
It's been brought up the possibility of an ethics committee investigation,
which is weird because ethics committee investigations usually have to do with things you do while you're in office, not necessarily things that happened before.
Yeah.
Right. But they were going to do this with Franken too until things happened that we'll get to later.
There was also talk of expulsion possibly,
which
but I don't know.
The Congress can do.
I don't know if there's enough support for that anymore now that Republicans are starting to back him more. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens if Moore wins. How the Republican Party, specifically Republicans in the Senate, handle this. Yeah. Will they welcome him with open arms, or would they try and expulse him? Is that
expel
him with a vote because they can do that?
Okay, but the precedent set by the Democrats right now is no matter how old or how or whatever the claim is, we're kicking them out. Because this week, Al Franken, who we've talked about recently, we'll come back to the Republicans. So we've talked about Al Franken recently. There were some crude photos. We've also had things where it's coming out over the last couple of days that he possibly groped people who are taking photos with him and a couple other things. And so So really, the things were piling up against him. The ethics committee was about to open an investigation into him. And then just yesterday, a lot of the Democratic women in the Senate, starting with Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, started turning against him and saying, look, we need to set a precedent here. And this is very much not okay. And you need to resign your seat. So today he did resign his seat. And he will be stepping down. The thing is about this that the allegations against Franken are leaps and bounds different from what Roy Moore's. Like, Roy Moore is accused of sexually assaulting 14-year-old girls, and Al Franken is accused of harassing adult women, not assaulting them. So there's that. The other thing that happened was that John Conyers, who is, I can't remember, he's a representative, right?
Representative from Michigan.
From Michigan. He was accused of sexual assault. There were several allegations against him and several things that were just heartbreaking, because this man was also a great civil rights activist and has been a giant in the House for a very long time.
Fun fact, he is the longest serving member of Congress. Like, both House and Senate. He has been serving the longest since, let me look it up real quick. I think since, the 60s.
He's been in there a really long time.
He has been in there for a long time. Longer than, Orrin Hatch. And Orrin Hatch has been in it forever. So, yeah. Okay, since 1965, he has been in the House of Representatives. 1965. That's a long time.
Yeah, especially to keep being elected. So he had a lot of allegations against him that were pretty serious. There were a lot of people calling on him to step down. He resigned on Tuesday and endorsed his son to replace him in his seat, which just step down. Don't endorse anyone. The last person in Senate, this is going to keep rolling out. We've had business executives and TV stars and Hollywood people, and this is not going away anytime soon. But the last person in Senate in Congress that we're going to talk about right now is Arizona Representative Franks, and he approached two of his what is the word I'm looking for?
Staffers.
His staffers to act as surrogates for his child, which
is way weird.
It's just weird. I don't. Anyway, he'll be resigning effective January 31st. He's a Republican, so it's just unsavory. It's a little weird. All right, so moving on from that stuff, let me reiterate my message from last week. Everybody respect everyone else, and we'll be okay from here on out.
Just quick note, it's interesting. A lot of people are pointing this out. The response of the Republicans versus the response of the Democrats. Yeah. The Democrats are coming out saying, you should step down, especially to Al Franken. Al Franken is a big presence in the Democratic Party. Yeah. He has been, rumored as a possible 2020 contender. And
he is he's one of those people that you want in a Senate confirmation hearing because
he asks good questions.
Because he asks good questions and he doesn't let people step down from those.
So the Democrats are going after one of their own beloved, whereas the Republicans are kind of either supporting or just weakly not saying anything about Roy Moore, who's not even he's not even elected yet. Al Franken has been a senator since 2008. Whereas Roy Moore hasn't even been elected. It's just stark, the difference between the Republicans and
in
the
some ways, the Democrats are trying to set themselves up as the moral guidepost,
which,
right?
At this point, they can validly claim
do that. Oh, yeah.
They can validly claim that. And I wonder how that will affect 2018 and 2020 and beyond.
In the past, there have been, Democrats have had some struggles with their response to sexual assault. Bill Clinton. Yeah. You okay over there?
That was a stumble.
We're
not saying that they're clean over there either.
No, but they are doing, with this rash, they're doing, they definitely have. They're doing much better in this realm of things, and it'll be interesting to see how the Republicans kind of pick themselves up, because they claim to be the party that stands for morality, and right now they are not standing for morality on this issue. All right, next thing, the new
quick note. This is a quick thing.
This is really quick. So go ahead.
I'm gonna take it.
Yep.
Okay. So the nominee for Homeland Security Secretary Kirsten Nielsen was confirmed by the Senate this week. 62 to 37. And this is interesting because she is the first former employee of the department to serve as secretary. Yeah. So all the other secretaries hadn't worked in the department, but she had. So that's kind of cool. She's got
also interesting to note that we went through all of the hurricanes this season without a defense or a secretary of defense who coordinates FEMA. Who is our that's what I meant to say. FEMA, which is the disaster response crew. All right, moving on. Trump visited Utah on Monday.
It was interesting.
Yeah, and he while he was here, he did some things, and one of those things was that he shrunk national. Oh shoot! I've forgotten all the words I had in my head just now. Yeah, national monuments that Obama had created. Obama created one of them, and then the other. Yeah. Anyway, so he shrunk them by about 2 million acres between the two of them, and there was Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, and there is outrage on the part of the Native Americans because a lot of their holy lands are there, and it's great for some people because they feel like they have their land for their for farming and for animal grazing again. Mm-hmm. So that's still an ongoing debate. Patagonia is suing, so are the Native Americans. So we'll see what happens. Expected. It's the biggest downsizing of a national monument that a president has ever done, though.
Well, what I think is interesting is Trump and the administration, Trump and the White House are claiming that under the Antiquities Act, which gives the president power to designate monuments, they're claiming also gives him the power to reduce or to take back a monument. Well, whereas the law doesn't explicitly say that. So there could be some grounds for some lawsuits because the law doesn't explicitly give him that power. It's kind of implied almost. And so that'll be definitely something the courts will need to
So Patagonia claimed on their home site that what Trump had done was illegal. And I was like trying to figure out, President Trump downsized in an illegal act, the president downsized, and you're like, I'm not sure how you got to that conclusion. Yeah, but that's go for
definitely debatable.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's still ongoing. We'll see what happens there. They're about half of Utah. Well, the half of Utah I listen to is really incensed about it. The other half is not incensed about it. And really just glad to have their land back. And the real concern about it is that these lands will be given over for oil drilling and for a couple other things that would desecrate the land and mining.
Yeah.
And if I'm remembering correctly, I think that Governor Herbert said something about that not being the case, but don't quote me on that and go do your own research. I might be fake news. Okay.
Ooh, the next one is a big one.
Yeah, and I am really upset about it. So there are few things that we could do that would really upset the world order, and in a way that is almost we almost can't recover from. And Trump did one of those yesterday. So for years, we have not recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. For a multitude of reasons. So the Congress passed a bill in 95.
Yeah, it was 95.
That recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And in the meantime, every 6 months, the president, since 95, okay, so it's been a bipartisan effort. Bush did this too. They have signed a waiver that kept our embassy in Tel Aviv and didn't recognize Jerusalem as the capital just yet. And the reason for that is because the minute that you establish Jerusalem, which is a holy city in all three of the major monotheistic religions, as soon as you establish that as the capital of Israel, which is a Jewish state, you anger the Muslims and you take away your one of your most your biggest incentives for getting the Palestinians to the negotiating table to finally figure out how we can stop the fighting between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Okay, so that's why we keep everyone at the table by not moving our embassy and and recognizing the capital as Jerusalem. Because, like I said, Jerusalem is a holy city for Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So that's been one of the biggest things. Like, how do you ensure that each of these three religions can worship in their holy area equally and effectively? Anyway, so it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. So Trump, it made one of his campaign promises to recognize Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel. And then he started at the beginning of the week, there was rumors that he was going to do that. And literally everyone said, dude, that's a bad idea. Literally everyone, like the Pope, presidents of France, Germany, and I'm pretty sure England said something. Saudi Arabia said something. All of the Arab Saudi world. Arabia, Jordan, Iran, Egypt, like literally everyone. Saudi Arabia and Iran don't agree on things, and they agreed on this.
And like Pope Francis. Like, he does get into political things, but nothing is like straight up political as this.
Nothing so controversial.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he was in Myanmar, and he is definitely an advocate for the poor and those who are refugees. So he didn't say anything about the Rohingya in public, because that would have angered people and put the Christian population in Myanmar in danger. Like, the Pope doesn't get into things like this. So literally everyone was like, Trump, dude, you really should not do this. And Mattis was saying it. Tillerson was saying it. Literally everyone, okay? Except for Trump and some of his team. So Trump went forward with this yesterday. Mm-hmm. And he declared that we're going to put, like, Jerusalem is the capital. We'll recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Israel was super happy about it.
Yeah, Netanyahu released a video and was like, thank you, Trump.
Oh, yeah. So in doing so, so the reason why this is... So every capital, we have an embassy in every capital city. That's how embassies work. You have an embassy in the capital city. So, but the problem is we don't have a building for it. And for it to be an embassy, it has to be like super secure. So it'll take at least 3 to 4 years to build such an embassy in Jerusalem. But the goal is to eventually move the embassy there. And it's just basically... I was listening to some Arab reactions to this policy change, and it's bad. Like, Palestinians were burning the American flag in the Gaza Strip today.
Hamas, so the, terrorist group in the Gaza Strip, has said that Trump has opened the gates of hell and calls for a day of rage. And the Hamas leader calls for a new intifada.
Right. Which
is, if you know Israeli Palestinian history, like, the intifadas were bad.
Right. And there have been two.
They're calling for a third, which is basically like a small war between the two sides. Big uprising, there were two. And so the fact that they're calling for a third one, like, that's scary.
Well,
because
and we
this
were...
region is so delicate. Yeah. As is, if they're going to start another intifada.
Yeah. We were already seeing a little bit of a cooling, and there was a little bit of calming in the region, and we were getting to the point where we could bring people to the negotiation table, and the negotiation table is gone. Like, there is no more negotiation table after this. And I was texting a friend, and she was like, I really don't see that this is fixable. Like, I don't think a lot of the things that Trump has done, I think, are fixable by an administration that comes after him. But this one, I'm not sure how. Like, it would take some really deft policy work to even make this a change. And even then, like, really what we said when Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, we pretty much said to the Palestinians, like, forget you. We never really cared about you and your position on any of this anyway, and we're done with this. And so really, like, I think we've burned our bridges. We've blown them up, and I'm not sure that another president can come along and fix them. So that's nice. It really doesn't, like, of all the things that Trump has done, I think this is one of the worst ones. And it's like, the Middle East is already so delicate. Why create a war where there isn't one already, and there isn't one. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Moving on, because this is making me a little bit angry. So the next thing, this is not going to help anything. On Saturday night at 2 a.m. Washington time, the Senate blasted through and passed their tax bill with illegible writing in the margins, and it's about a 400 and some odd page tax bill. And didn't give, the Democrats had moved to postpone the bill until Monday so that they had a chance to read it. The Republicans denied them that chance. The only Republican who didn't vote for the tax bill was,
Corker?
Corker. Yeah, it was Corker, because it added $1 trillion. It will, over the span of a year, 10 years or something like that, add $1 trillion to the deficit, because it's a tax cut. You don't make up the money because you're cutting from everyone. You don't make up the money by taxing anybody more. Anyway, there are a lot of things. They're in conference now, combining the House bill with the Senate bill. The House bill, the biggest problem I think for people our age is that the House bill, if you're planning on going to graduate school, the House bill would make your graduate tuition waivers taxable income, which is like saying, okay, this money is going to your tuition, but you still have to pay taxes on it, and obviously you don't ever see that money because it just applies straight to your tuition, and then that money is coming out of pocket, and that's ridiculous. That is absolutely positively ridiculous. So call your state senators and call the Republicans. The thing that bothers me the most and makes me feel like we can do nothing is that Hatch authored the bill, and he's our senator.
That really does suck.
Yep.
Like, kind of an example, I had a scholarship to USU that covered both my tuition and my out-of-state tuition. So the scholarship was worth, like, $80,000. If I had to pay taxes on that, I might as well have just paid that tuition.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I don't know how, like, tuition waivers, if I understand nuance, the tuition waivers are a little bit different from scholarships, but not by much. Tuition waivers are usually granted in the case where someone is offered, like, a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship, and they're given a tuition waiver because they're doing that. But it's a ridiculous addendum, and there are other ridiculous addendums in there. Mostly that middle income families will receive a cut at the very beginning in the first couple of years of the tax bill, but their taxes will slowly go up over time, and the big businesses are catching the biggest break of all of this, and they're expecting, because these businesses are getting a break, that they're going to pay more money to their employees, but they're not going to do that. There's no requirement for them to do that, and so they're not going to take this money and do anything with it that will actually influence and help their employees, and the administration really doesn't understand that. There are a lot of things that are kind of sucky about this bill, and so it definitely is worth resisting.
Well, especially not their low-end employees who need it.
Right.
They might give it to, like, their other top executive people,
right,
managers, leaders, but the middle class who just, like, have all the average jobs.
Right. And then there's also, like, a sunset clause in 10 years for the middle income. Like, these tax cuts will go away if they're not extended by Congress. So, I mean, there's just a bunch of things in here that are not going to help the average American, but the Republicans think they need a win, and so they're driving this through. It's not working for them. Okay. That's the end for politics this week. Lots of things that we talked about. So, the soapbox this week is stews.
All right. So, Trump, a lot of what Trump does is a lot of what he does is trying to undo Obama's legacy. You know, he bashes on Obama all the time. And one of his things now, since it's Christmas, is, you know, the White House is saying, Merry Christmas again.
Yeah,
we're bringing back Merry Christmas is Trump's biggest claim. Alluding to the fact that Obama didn't say Merry Christmas, or, like, it wasn't okay before. Like, dude, really? Like,
yeah.
For the record, like, Obama said Merry Christmas. Like, the White House still said Merry Christmas. They still had Christmas trees. They still had Christmas decorations. Like, they still had the lighting of the annual Christmas tree. Like, I don't know, like, where in his mind, like, Obama didn't say or use the words Merry Christmas.
Trump kind of has a war on politically correct rhetoric.
Yeah, like, he does. He does. So, it just bothers me. Like, no, dude, like, I know you want to slam Obama, but, like, you can prove this stuff. Like, you can look this stuff up. Like...
Right. Well, he doesn't look anything up.
No. It's just what he sees on Fox and Friends. It's just...
So, but this is, like... I mean, we've gotten to the point where we say Happy Holidays now because it's not politically correct to say Merry Christmas and stuff like that, and it's all perfectly correct and perfectly okay to be politically correct, but in some ways it's also okay to say Merry Christmas. And I was on Twitter, and I saw this card or this tweet from a journalist in London, And he said, it was a picture of a Christmas card from the mayor of London, who is Muslim. And he said, it's a lovely world in which a Jewish journalist, and I'm paraphrasing here, a Jewish journalist can receive a card from the Muslim mayor of London that says Merry Christmas. And it was just this like beautiful thing that like Christmas has become, it is a religious holiday for some people, but it also has become like a cultural holiday. And so it's real for everyone. And so it's okay to say Merry Christmas, and it's also okay to say Happy Holidays. And if somebody gets upset with you for saying Merry Christmas, you can say, okay, I didn't mean to offend your religious sensibilities. Would you prefer that I say Happy Holidays? But the other thing that Trump is doing is that in bringing back Merry Christmas, he is gypping other... He isn't being sensitive to other religions. So they held a Hanukkah party tonight at the White House, and there wasn't a single menorah, and there wasn't, like... But instead they had 3 Christmas trees. Like, he's sanitizing other religions to bring back Christmas, and that's where we're going wrong. Is that the United States is a plural society in which we are the freedom to choose who we worship and what we worship and how we worship. And in bringing back Merry Christmas, he's not just bringing back Merry Christmas. I mean, he is bringing back Merry Christmas in a like vehement, vigorous way that is to the exclusion of all other holiday traditions of other religions, and that's not the way that America should be. No.
I mean, and we have enshrined in our First Amendment, of all places, like freedom of religion.
Yep.
So
I think that what he's saying is not let's bring back Merry Christmas, because Obama didn't say it. I think he's saying let's bring back Merry Christmas as a Christian tradition and exclude all the other religions.
Yeah. Sad.
Yep, it really is. All right.
Well, another week. Another news.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.